Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning to all of you. As you know that linguistics is a scientific study of language. Before going to discuss on the linguistics, it is very necessary to discuss about the language, that what language is. As we know that language is connected to our human lives. It is the most interesting entity that mankind has ever come across. We use language for communicating our thoughts, we use language for communicating our feelings with others. And the language that we use, this is transmitted from generation to generation. Okay. We know that language has become an essential part of our lives. And the study of language in a scientific and systematic way is very essential in both terms of the academic and also in terms of cultural point of view, because language occupies an important place in the lives of the human beings. Language is the medium of expressions. Everyday activities of our life are sure to come to an end unless the language functions as a means of communication. We know that language is basically tied up with the social and with the cultural evolution of the mankind, right? Now we shall discuss in this lecture, we shall discuss the two things which are very important. We shall discuss the definition of language, then we shall discuss the human language and the animal language. Now, what is language? There are the different definitions that are given by the different linguists, and to define language is not easy task. Different languages, they try to define the language variously. If we analyze the definition closely, we will find that each of these definition is incomplete in some respects, and these definition will raise some important questions. As we know that the language is a means of communication. Okay, it is a means of conveying our thoughts, it is a means of conveying our ideas, it is a means for conveying our feelings and emotions to other people. Now, language is not only the means of communication here. Okay, because language is not only source of communication, language is the beyond communication system. Sign, gestures and facial expressions can also communicate our thoughts. Sign, gesture and facial expression can also communicate our ideas. So language is different from signs and the gestures because it implies the speech sounds, and these speech sounds have some meaning. So that's why we are saying that the language is basically different from the signs and the gestures. Language is not only the source of communication, it is beyond the communication system. Understand? There is another definition that is given by the Edward Sapir. Edward Sapir said that language is a purely human and non-instinctive method, and this method is basically used for communicating our ideas, for communicating our emotions, for communicating our desires. How? By using some symbols. Okay, now this definition is probably to some extent incomplete, because the ideas, emotions and the desires are not only the things that are communicated by language. Now the term language covers basically a wide range of implications, such as the body language, such as the sign language, such as the animal language. So this definition is rather incomplete. Okay, there is another definition that is given by the Professor Chomsky. Professor Chomsky state that the language is a set of finite or infinite sentences, each finite in the length and constructed out of the finite set of the elements. Here Chomsky focuses on the structural features of language. Professor Chomsky shows that how language can be investigated by analyzing it into the different constituent elements. Understanding? Each of these linguists, they focus on the certain aspect of the language and they ignore the some others. Now there are some characteristics of the language. What are those? Let's see. these are the some major characteristics of the human language. Language is a ubiquitous, language is a means of communication, language is a systematic, language is a conventional, language is arbitrary, language is a social, language is cultural, language has a duality of a structure, language is recursive, and displacement transforms some others. For example, language is dynamic. Okay, so these characteristics feature of human language basically make the differences between animal communication and the human being communication. So these differences are primarily due to the fact that human brain is different from the animal, because human brain has an innate capacity for learning a language creativity, understanding or not. Okay, there is another point which is very important to understand, that human language is different from animal language in regard of some respects. For example, in regard of the duality of patterning, human language is different from the animal communication because of the recursiveness. Human language is different from the animal communication because of the displacement, and human communication is different from the animal communication because of the transferability. Okay, now what is the duality of patterning? Duality of patterning means that language displays at the two level of patterning. It displays at the level of the sounds and some similar units. For example, units like the phonemes, units like the morphemes, units like the words. Okay, a stretch of the speech in any human language can be analyzed into the similar units. Getting a note? And a larger number of meaning can be expressed by the means of some limited number of the signals. Understanding or not? Means the language has a duality. One at the level of sounds, then at the level of the structure. There is another features, characteristics which makes the difference between the animal communication and the human communication, that is the recursiveness. Now, what is recursiveness? Simply creativity. Okay, human beings, we know that we can produce infinite number of sentences. We can produce a longer sentence from the short sentence. Means we are able, we have creativity, we have aptitude, we have a capacity, we have ability to construct the infinite number of sentences from the finite number of rules. So this ability, this capacity, this property of language is called the recursiveness. So this creativity basically human being possess, not the animals. There is another features of language that makes the difference between the human communication and the animal communication, that is called the displacement. We know that human beings can talk about some experiences. Okay, he can talk about the present things, he can talk about the past things, he can talk about the future things. This ability of thinking in present, thinking in past, thinking about the future, so this ability only human being possess, because we can talk about the present, we can talk about the past events, we can talk about the future events. Okay, this property of language is called the displacement that we only possess, means human beings. There is another features, there is another, we can say, traits of the language that makes the difference between the animal communication and the human being communication, that is called the transferability. Means that human language has two basic manifestations. Okay, what are those? First is speech, because we speak also. Second, we write. This sometime we change our spoken language into the written down. Okay, and for changing the spoken language into the written down, this property is called the transferability.